This is Grainne Hunt here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On this episode, I chat with a super talented and super nice singer-songwriter Grainne Hunt. Her unusual story is that she put her obvious music talent to one side for many years and settled into what most of us would consider to be a normal life. And then she decided at some point that she was cheating herself. We chatted about her music, creativity during lockdown, and the many collaborations and other projects that she's involved in. Let's hear from Grainne. Hey, Grainne Hunt, how are you?
Hello, Grainne Hunt.
The first thing I thought we'd end up talking about wasn't what I was expecting. we went full on and oh my God, look at the state of me. I've been doing my tax returns.
Yeah, the joys of being a self-employed musician.
You are a businesswoman, aren't you? You have to be.
Yeah. Like now, to be fair, I do get an accountant to do the tax return, but there's an awful lot of work that goes into it before you can hand it over to them, and I like a bit of control. So rather than sending them like a box full of receipts and go and do your best, I like to kind of sort all that stuff out before I send it on. So yeah, there's a lot of strings to a lot of bows, I think, when you're a musician working for yourself,
Yeah, so you're a bookkeeper.
Bookkeeper, I am.
Of course, you're a singer-songwriter. Of course, you're a guitarist. You're a social media manager.
Yeah.
You're an agent.
A booker, a PR person or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've just got to do it all. Like I definitely struggle with the balance of it all, because I think I found that, you realize, social media thing. I'm going to do like a calendar up and I'm going to get really into like posting things and scheduling my posts and, being really good at it. And you might do that for a week. And then something else that you need, I need to do a MailChimp. I haven't done a MailChimp in a while, or I need to do something for my Patreon, or I have to write a song. I have to sit down and play. I need to practice. I need to, wait a minute. I also need to put a wash on, clean the house, get shopping in, and then come back and do your tax return and sort out my receipts. And I feel like it's quite easy to get distracted. I'm not very good at like blocking out my time and being like, right, I'll spend an hour doing this and an hour doing that. And I get very enthusiastic about things and then maybe forget about the social media until something exciting happens. And then probably nobody sees it because the algorithms don't like that you haven't posted in a while and, you're just up against it.
Grainne, you should get a job in Fusion. This is the conversation we have with our clients every day of the week about laying out their social media strategy, working out their content plan to make sure they tick the box on all of their messaging, and putting budget behind a lot of it because, as you said, the algorithms have it just chewed up.
Yeah.
Actually, the Holy Grail, I know before we hit record, I was chatting to about Brendan Murphy and the four of us.
Yeah.
And in a funny way, I kind of tell you where the conversation started. So I had him on my podcast and we were chatting away. And this is something that I kind of think about, and I could absolutely have the same conversation with you. They play a venue in Cork City. In their case, now it might have been the White Horse. In your case, it would have been Collins, because the last time I saw you, you were playing with Mark Erie.
Yeah.
And you go to the gig and you're looking around and saying, Jesus almighty, this is a small venue. And you know how fantastic the musicians are. And you're thinking, okay, you know what you paid for a ticket. You do the sums very quickly. There's probably half a dozen people who are friends who, you did favors for or whatever, and that they got free tickets. You might sell a tiny bit of stuff after. And the numbers just don't stack up. Mm-hmm. And the question for Brendan, because I remember watching them playing in the City Hall, when they're at their peak, Mary, the whole thing is sold out and playing the huge, huge gigs. And my question for him was, when you come to the White Horse and you stick your head around the door and you ask the venue owner, how many tickets have you sold or whatever, and for whatever reason, it wasn't a sold out gig. Mm-hmm. was kind of saying, is that soul destroying? And then you have to hop in the car and, in their case, go back up to Carlingford. And he was kind of saying to me, intimate crowd, it's all cool, we love playing and all that kind of thing. But after he's saying, yeah, of course, it's really, really difficult. What he was saying to me is that during lockdown, his kind of promise to himself was that he'd absolutely master all of the digital stuff, the kind of the social media and the email. So I think his big gig was getting people's email address.
Yes.
It's the holy grail.
No, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because it always comes back to a mailing list. Yeah. And regardless of your Instagram or your Facebook, it does seem to be the thing that you need to have from people is their email and getting them on a mailing list.
And in our case, Grainne, I've seen you play a number of times. I think you're fantastic. And when I was doing a little bit of research for our conversation today, I said, oh my God, Grainne had a new album in 2009. Why didn't I know that? And I'm sure, and I absolutely know, because I did look back in your social media, and I'm a follower of yours, I never noticed that you had a new album.
Yeah.
And you're probably, you're kind of saying there, you may not have been methodical about it, but absolutely you would have been punching it out at that time. And we're just not seeing it anymore.
Yeah.
But that email is like the holy grail.
Yeah. I think that's one thing I found when it got to the time to put the last record out. I struggled with my capacity for doing everything. And I realized that I do a lot of stuff in Germany and Austria and Switzerland, and you go there and a crowd turns up. They're interested because you're not from there and you've come there to play music, and they want to hear about this person who's come. And you're playing to full rooms and you've done very little from a promotional perspective because the venue there has done it, or the person who's having the house concert has gotten 50 people into a room or whatever. And I found that trying to get the record into people's hands, in radio and all that sort of stuff, and then also selling the tickets for the shows that I put on that were connected to the release, all of that was just so much. And Ireland is a hard place to sell tickets for gigs. It's a bit of a slog. And I don't know what the answer to that is, and I suppose my answer to that is I just go back to Germany.
And when I was chatting to Brendan, something that he's been doing, and I think his brother Declan was saying, you're nuts, that's not going to work, whatever. He was emailing people every week. I mean, every week, and telling the story of a song and a free download or whatever, or he's a link to a video we played somewhere. And they started off doing this kind of, during lockdown, this thing on a Thursday night, Ask Us Anything, a live thing on Facebook. And they've been getting good reaction to it. And I think in a funny way too, it gave him a bit of a lift during that time. So they were still doing a gig every Thursday or whatever. But the amazing thing, we saw them 2 weeks ago on the White Horse. You could absolutely see that the people in that room had a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. There was the banter that had continued from their regular Thursday nights and just getting kind of up close and comfortable.
Yeah.
I think the Irish are kind of good at that, and like that now. I suppose we would have chatted to you at the end of gigs and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But I suppose in a way they're nearly doing that every Thursday. No, I'm not sure. Maybe that's just a lockdown thing and it mightn't continue. But he was surprised. He was saying the numbers haven't dropped or whatever, and they've got very intimate with their audience. And the Joe on the White Horse was telling me when they put up a listing for all the gigs over the last month or two, I think some of those governments sponsored or subsidized gigs or whatever. But he said the Four of Us gig was sold out before it got listed on the White Horse site because they gave the guys a link to it.
Beforehand, yes.
And genuinely, I would have seen Brendan and the Four of Us maybe a few years earlier, and the gigs wouldn't have been sold out. And I think it's not because they weren't popular, it's because people just, with social media and everything else, we're so busy growing.
Yeah. And I do think you miss things, like you saying that you didn't know that I had an album out. I think, unless you're...
And ironically, what's it called?
This Secret.
This is just perfect.
But that idea, unless you're kind of consistently interacting with people, you just don't show up on their feeds, Yeah. So I think maybe it's better if you don't have loads of followers and then that bubble is smaller so that there's less stuff going on. But I it's really difficult to kind of figure out. I struggle, I think, with like the ask, you know, and even the likes of putting on a regular gig online. Like I really struggled with that because I felt like I didn't want to be putting on something that I was asking people to come to all the time. And it's like it's more of a mental block in my head. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be that way, but I feel like it's something that's not just about gigs. Like I just really struggle like to ask for stuff. Do you know what I mean?
I have a wine story for you. It's a wine and an email story. Do you remember when Dunnes Stores and Tesco and everyone else, they were forced to pull the plug on their drink promotions because of, Okay, so instead of getting my 6 bottles of wine, so on Dunnes Stores where you get your 10 off 50, I was getting this email every fortnight or whatever from a crew called Curious Wines. That's fine. Yeah, so they got my order instead. The case gets delivered to the house. We're in lockdown. That's fine. You know, that there's someone here pretty much all the time. So it's grand, and that email keeps coming. But before lockdown, if I wanted to buy a special bottle of wine, I'd go into the wine buff in town, just around the corner from the office. They're fantastic in there. They'll pick out a bottle of wine for you. And so about a month ago, I'm in town and I pop into the wine buff and I'm saying, sorry guys, haven't been around in ages, haven't been working in town, etc., etc. And I said, yeah, I've been buying online from Curious Wines. And they were like, we sell online. I'm like, well, I'm on your database and you never tell me anything. So, and I never even knew you did deliveries online. So now that I have that piece of information, you know, when we run out of wine, which is on a regular basis, I'll order. But this is the weird thing. Now, even though I've had the conversation with them, they still haven't got their email lists going out. So what I'm doing now, I get if anyone is listening from Curious Wines, they'll be very annoyed with me. So the email comes in from Curious Wines, and that's my prompt to order the wines from the wine book. But it's just that reminder, you know, it's just kind of like I'm relevant. Come back to me. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a little bit difficult. But anyway, so we got into this bullshit technical conversation from tax returns and having to do everything.
Yeah.
So what I love to do is for the listener to get a sense of who this lovely creature that I'm chatting to is. Who the hell is she and where did she come from? So I'm going to throw the ball to you and ask you that question.
Well, I suppose I'm from Carrickmacross, County Monaghan, and I now live in Kildare in Kilcock. And I lived here when I was in college in Maynooth 20 years ago, and I moved back here about 3 years ago, 2.5.
Tell me, in Carrickmacross, were you a city girl or a country girl?
Oh, country girl. Well, town, I suppose, but definitely not city. Do you know what I mean? We were. Yeah. It was a small town, big kind of hinterland or whatever catchment area.
What did mum and dad do?
Daddy was a primary school teacher. Mammy worked in her dad's clay manufacturing factory. Was a singer, like in the choir, in folk groups when she was probably in her late teens, early 20s. Like played a bit of guitar. I have it here. I got it off her recently. So she bought an Ovation. They went to Massachusetts for some like concert gig when she was pregnant with me, and she bought an Ovation when she was there. So she's still, well, she doesn't have it. I have it now. But it recently became part of my collection. So, but we were always there was always singing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we were in the school church choirs. There was a kids choir on a Saturday evening, and then there'd always be the secular element to that as well, depending on what time of the year it was and what was coming up. And there might be, I don't know, a concert during the year, and it wouldn't be church related, you know. And then in my early teens, there was a community games variety show that we joined, myself and my sister, and we did that for a couple of years, and came back from Mosney with the gold medal when I think it was 15. It was my last year, which was kind of a great farewell to it. You know, I can still remember being in 6th class in primary school, and the teacher, when we'd stand up to do the Angelus at 12 o'clock, would occasionally, you know, put the call in for Grainne to sing a verse of something or other. Do you know what I mean?
And how did that feel for you? Was that?
I suppose at the time it was just like, all right, here we go again. Do you know what I mean?
But did you know you had a talent that other people didn't have?
I don't know if I was aware of it as such, like that. Do you know what I mean? That I had something that somebody else didn't have. Do you know what I mean? I suppose I would have been aware that nobody else was going to get asked. If this was going to happen, it was going to be me, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Did you like that?
it didn't bother me. Like I suppose, like that's I had this thing when I was like, I suppose maybe in my teens, that I always knew that I was going to sing. And, I finished school and I did a music degree in college or whatever, and I got nodules on my vocal cords and I stopped singing, and I kind of did little bits and pieces when I was in my 20s. But I kind of got to my, like, in and around hitting 30, and I was like, I had this realization. It was like, okay, maybe I am going to sing, but I have to do something about it. Like, I can't be sitting around. And I kind of was just waiting for something to fall into my lap, like, do you know what I mean? And I wasn't being proactive about it or doing anything about it to make sure that that was what was going to happen. And it was at that stage that I kind of made that realization, and I kind of thought, right, I need to think about this differently, and I need to make shapes towards it happening.
How did the girl who was always asked to sing, the Angelas, avoid that as a profession, up to the age of 30? Was it fear, or was it the passion just wasn't enough at that stage? Or how do you explain that? Or was it just, safety first? You need a career, you need money, the thing that all of our parents, that path they kind of put us safely on all of the time?
Well, like, I suppose, like, I went to do a music degree, do you know what I mean? And I think when I got to Maynooth, I came from a very, I suppose, like, limited musical background. I did music in my leaving cert. I would have done a few singing lessons here and there through the years. I would have done a bit of piano, but I didn't stick at it. Like, I wasn't walking into a degree with a huge musical knowledge behind me in the way that some of the other students would have done. And Brendan, I did the Irish record with, we were in university together. And Brendan was a ridiculous guitar player when I met him. Do you know what I mean? And he's only gotten even more incredible since then, But I wasn't walking in there with kind of the wealth of knowledge that some of the other people were. So I felt like I was at a bit of a disadvantage. But I also was very conscious that I remember one of the girls a year ahead of us, I think she fell over and twisted her ankle or something. And I dropped her home to her house, wherever it was. And I remember she went in and she sat down at the piano and she started playing. And she was like, "Say it's true, there's nothing like me and you." And like, I was in first year at this time, and I just thought, oh my God, like, if I come out of college sounding with this kind of very classically trained, very typically sounding classical voice, like, and losing my vocal ability or my vocal sound, I just hate it. And I found that a lot of, the training that you were being offered was very much directed towards you sounding that and going down that.
That was like a theatre voice nearly, was it?
She was quite theatre, quite like very opera. Like, it was probably more operatic. I probably don't do it very well. Do you know what I mean? But very, like, very, like, I do enunciate quite well, but very kind of over enunciated, but very, I just felt it was quite generic, and I was like, I don't want to sound generic, And I suppose then I got notches on my vocal cords and I didn't sing. I used to have to go to choir. You had to attend choir as part of your year, but like, I'd go and mime because I couldn't sing, and did some vocal therapy and kind of decided against doing an operation, went down that route, which I think was the right thing to do. But my voice is completely the different voice to the voice that I had when I was 17, 18, 19, And
were you singing at that time? I know you weren't singing in a band or anything, but were you singing the odd time at different occasions, or was it nothing?
Like outside of college, or kind of like leaving cert, I would have done, like, I did leaving cert music or whatever. We would have gone to the open mic nights, and I played. I didn't really play guitar, so I'd find somebody else who play, and we'd play a Tom Waits song, or we'd do a Damien Rice song, or, do you know what I mean? So not really. Like, I suppose that music degree was very focused on a particular type of music, and you had to kind of step away from it to move into the other elements. It was, and I was doing the pure music. I wasn't just doing arts music, whereas arts music were mixed with more people, and we were music only. And yeah, it just took me, I suppose it took me a while to, like, I didn't never wrote anything before I was probably 31 or 2 or something. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't.
So other than meeting some interesting people who you've collaborated since, did that serve you at all from a musical point of view?
Like, I suppose, look, if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be where I am today, because the things that happened wouldn't have happened in the same order. Do you know what I mean? But then had I done something else, I may have gone to music quicker. But sure, you can't. What's the point in thinking about that? Do you know what I mean? Part of me looks at it now and thinks, God, like, I'd love to have been a bit more aware of the education that I was getting. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of like, I was conscious that I didn't want to sound that way, but also I kind of didn't really get into a lot of the theory, or, I did. Like, I think I got a 2-1, maybe. Did I get a 2-2? I can't even remember what I got my degree. Like, I mean, I did enough to get by. I did my essays. I did my homework. Like, I went to all my lectures. I didn't bum out of school. Like, do you know what I mean? But I do wonder, like, if BIM was around when I was that age, like, and I know there was Ballyfermot, but I don't think the mammy would have let me go to Ballyfermot. But do you know what I mean? I do wonder, like, if I'd been given that as a starting block, how things would have gone. But sure, like, just the way it goes.
Here we are.
Here we are, exactly.
So all of that kind of working part of your life, obviously you were just the same as the rest of us. You were having a job and living your life and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was there even songwriting at that stage?
No. I started working in language schools. I got a job as an old family friend used to say, the minister for fun. So I used to be the activities person, and I'd take them all out and essentially go and get hammered on a Thursday night in town and, like, turn up hungover for work the next day, and it was allowed because that was my job. And kind of gradually, like, moved out of that sort of role into more of kind of admin management. Did a bit of teaching for a while. Did a teaching course as well, but I came back into management, ran loads of centres, like, looked after loads of kids in various places, but didn't, like, we do karaoke. Students had always wanted me to go karaokeing. Do you know what I mean? They'd love for me to get up and sing. And I did, like, at that point, I suppose mid to late 20s, I was in a couple of different bands or setups with friends. But I think as well at that stage, I realised, I was in a situation where if someone turned around to me tomorrow and went, right, you have to move to Berlin and the band is going, these are all going to start playing music there, I'd be like, grand. Whereas everybody else in the band had, like, it was all lads, they all had girlfriends, some of them had kids, some of them were having kids, some of them were getting married, do you know what I mean? Like, so, like, they weren't in the same place as I was, or would ever be in the same place that I was, because they would have had different sort of commitments. And I kind of thought, like, I suppose, like, all of that was leading up to me, I suppose, making the decision to do stuff on my own, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so there wasn't going to be a band anyway, that's for sure. So can you recall that moment when you walked out of that full-time job and good luck, there's a new chapter, big time, is about to start? Yeah,
like, I think so. In and around when I was turning 30, I'd had that realization where I was like, well, if I want to actually sing, I'm going to have to do something about this. Like, it's not going to fall into my lap. And loads of other people are doing it, but they're doing something about it. And I met Mark, and he was looking for a singer to go on tour with a record. And my hairdresser was looking for a childminder. And he kind of thought maybe when I was looking at working in the language school that I might know somebody who might be available to work, And I was like, God, no, sure, they wouldn't have a car, and they wouldn't be, time-wise with classes and everything. And it was only when I walked out that I thought, like, maybe things are coming together here. Maybe I should consider doing something like this. So I did. Like, I left. I'm trying to think of the timeline. There was so many moves between actual, like, building moves with work as well. But I think they'd just moved to a new building on Dawson Street, and the girl who came to replace me came in on the Monday for the first day, and on Tuesday she didn't show up. The job was that mental. I was delighted to be getting out of it, to be fair, but kind of I did end up going back to them as well, like, in the interim, because, the childminding thing, I did that for 2.5 years. And at the beginning, it was kind of a broken schedule over 2 weeks, where the kids were swapped between the father and the mother, and I'd drop off and there'd be pickups and whatever. It'd be 2 days on, 2 days off, yada, yada, yada. And it was kind of a mad mix of a week, but I knew what weekends I'd have free if I wanted to book anything and that sort of thing. And then it changed to 6 days on, 8 days off. And that was insane. Like, I was doing 10-hour days, 6 days in a row. And I was the taxi driver for 3 kids, like, really, And they were great, do you know what I mean? But it was draining.
That was just paying the bills, was it?
barely.
But that was the intention of it. It wasn't because you had a love of minding children or anything.
No, yeah, well, it was kind of, I suppose it was more for the time as well. It was like, right, I'll have a bit of money to pay the bills, but also I'll have this time where I can do other things and think about, right, maybe like at that point I wasn't thinking about writing songs, but I was thinking about singing, you know.
And you got that opportunity with Mark Geary, you were saying.
Yeah.
And when did the songwriting come? Because like that now, I remember seeing you playing with Mark. And then, you know, at a certain point in time, you'd always hear the fantastic voice and everything. But at a particular moment in the gigs, he said, you know, now we've grown you with one of our own songs, etc. And you're like, oh, whoa, there's a big fire burning in this woman, obviously. So did that come easy to you, the songwriting? And
you know, it was really weird. We were down doing a gig in, I want to say Waterford. And it was a little festival. And there was this woman from Wales there. Cheryl. And she was wild, like wild. And after the gig, we stand out in the foyer or something, and she came down the corridor and she was like I've described her so many times to you, but she was like kind of like an orangutan. She was all arms and she was coming down. She was like, oh my God, you were amazing. Like she was just coming at me telling me about it was amazing. And she was running a female performers festival in the Botanic Gardens in Wales the following year. And this might have been maybe like November or something. And the festival was taking place like that following summer. And she was like, will you come and play? And I was like, but like, I don't really play, you know? At that point, like I hadn't written any songs or anything. And I was like, I don't do that, you know? And she was like, but you've loads of time. Giving you a couple of months now, but you've loads of time. And I was like, I kind of just went, I don't know whether it was the shock of it or I don't know whether I was feeling ballsy or what. I just was like, okay, we'll do it. So then I started to kind of I suppose, isolated myself a bit because I was like, right, I have to write. I need to write some songs. I need to start working on some things. So I kind of hunkered down and started writing a couple of songs. And like a week before I went to the festival, I had like a really small little house concert in the house I was living in and invited a few people over, and I had some friends play some songs with me as well. Like it was, and I just thought like, you know, if I played a few of my own songs, did a couple of covers, I think I did a song that I used to play in a band with the lads, you know, like kind of that thing. So I wasn't going over and just playing covers. Do you know what I mean? I think I played maybe 2 covers and then all other stuff between my own stuff and whatever. And I thought after that, I was like, right, I've done it now. It's grand. And I kind of stopped. I didn't continue that train at all. And I don't know if it was that year or even the next year that a guy called James Kramer.
So while we're having this conversation, is there a song from that early period that you're really happy with that we could press play on now?
No, I didn't record any of it. I don't have any of it anywhere.
Okay.
It's not.
So nothing kind of survived from those early days, no?
They just kind of, I don't know, you know, I think things come in kind of waves and bounds. And you know, that was a kind of a starting point for me. And it was almost like an exercise, you know, to kind of start the muscle of songwriting. And while I kind of left it lapse after that for a while, I suppose you develop your craft. And I suppose I should probably go back and look at them and see like how I feel about them if I were to play them now, you know, but like they're literally, I'd struggle to probably figure out even how to play them anymore, you know, that kind of way, because they're that long ago. And they just they filled that purpose at that time. And then I moved on to another thing, you know, that kind of way.
Okay.
And then I met this guy, James Kramer. He got in touch with me on Twitter. And I think it was after a Glen gig, I'd jumped up and done a song. And he messaged me and he was like, you know, you should come and do a song with my band some night. And he's in a band called Tupelo. And I'd actually been to see them a couple of months previous, and they were really good. They're like I think they call themselves the Folk Roots. He plays like guitar, he plays loads, all the stringed instruments. He just like plays them all. And then he has a fiddle player, one of the other lads in the band. And I think there was 3 of them. There's 2 of them now. They're just really good, really like fun, upbeat, engaging. Like, and that conversation developed very quickly from you should jump up and sing with our band to maybe we should write together. On the first week of January, we sat down and I was like, how do I, like, I'd never considered that was even something that you do with somebody. Do you know what I mean? And like, what ended up happening was I had written all of the music. So the chords, the guitar part, the melody for Lilacs. And I'd written all that and I just didn't know what to do with it. And it took me such a long time to develop the playing of it. Like, and I still feel that I can't play it, but like, it took me such a long time to figure that all out that I hadn't gotten to lyrics with it. And I was like, well, sure, right. Look, you take this and come back to me. And he was like, okay, well then you take this. And he handed me exactly the same kind of footprint for the words of it all. So I did the lyrics for that while he'd done all the music, and then vice versa for Lilacs. And that was kind of a start. And we worked on Firing Pin and No Way I Go Down, and then he had written Low Tides and Chances. And he was like, right, there you go, let's get into the studio. And I was like, what? You know, within a couple of weeks he was like, come on, you're done, let's get it started, you know. And I was like, you know, it was the fire that I needed. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just need somebody to give you that push. And it was great.
Yeah, you just hadn't been exposed to that, really, had you?
No. Like, and I wouldn't have known where to go.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can't remember where I got the money for it, but I must have had some money put aside, and we just went in and did a few days in the Cauldron, which isn't there anymore, on Blessington Street, and just got it down. And then what ended up happening was I had this whole thing, and we'd ended up playing, myself and James and a bass player played some gigs out in the Axis in Ballymun, and they recorded the set. So we took 3 of those live songs and we were going to put them on the CD as well. It was like, let's make it, just put 9 songs in it, and there'd be some live vibe there. But I had it, you know, it was all done. It was mastered. It was like sitting essentially on my computer, and I suppose I didn't really know what to do with it then. And then it got to the middle of the summer and I was like, I have to do something with this. I have to put it out, you know? And it was literally like, you know, you have to just do it. There's never going to be a right time. You know what I mean? You have to just like pull the firing pin and just go for it. Like, do you know what I mean? And yeah, and that was that was the start of it. That was like September 2015 when that came out.
Yeah, so Grainne was born.
Grainne was born. I remember going to pick up the CDs and I left at the time. I must have been back in the office doing some work for them. And I left there to drive out to Sandyford to pick up the stuff. And in my head, when I was driving out there, I was like, about 1,000 CDs. I was like, maybe they won't all fit in my car. I was like, you know how big a CD is? Like, I don't know what I thought, or how many boxes I thought they were going to give me. Like, they easily fit into the boot of my car. Like, do you know what I mean? No problem, like, with them fitting into the car. But, you know, you get so, like, excited about these things, you know.
They might even have broken the suspension, you know, the way they were so heavy and the ass of the car dragging along the road behind you.
Oh, she must have picked up her CDs. Look at the car. Yeah.
That was a nice feeling, I'd say, was it?
Yeah, it was great, you know, and I suppose it was really nice to do it in that way, to be able to go out and pick them up from somewhere, you know. Like, I know, like, the next set that I bought, when I bought The Secret, actually, I bought them from the UK pre-Brexit, and I was in the US when they arrived. So I ended up getting them delivered to my friend Sinead's house, and I'd sent, like, so I knew that I was going to be away, but I also knew that the stuff had to go out in the post. So I had all my envelopes and my letters written and ready to go.
The businesswoman
again. Oh my God. Like, yeah. So I dropped them off to my friend so I had to go down to Monaghan and dropped them off to my friend Sinead. So she like got the CDs delivered to her house. She took all these lovely pictures of them to send them to me so I could put them on social media. And then she basically did my drop of the first like stuff that went to press or whatever, because so then when I got back, I think I was back like a week later or maybe 2 weeks later, and then I was able to do the follow-up and do a bit of work on it. It was a very different, but then I suppose I'd already had that lovely feeling, like I'm like, right, more CDs, let's just get them and sell them. You know? I have boxes of them everywhere. Like, Jesus, like, I know you can see that press behind me. There's boxes of CDs in there, and yeah, just CDs everywhere.
Yeah. So tell me about the album.
If you were to ask me, like, when did I write it or how did I write it, I'm not even sure that I could tell you about the songs necessarily that were written for it. Like, some of them I took myself away because, you know, like, I lived in rented accommodation or I was sharing houses with people, and you know, you're trying to like get in a space like that to be creative can be really hard. I used to like pack myself away and go somewhere. And I visited this beautiful house in Blessington, which used to be a recording studio actually. And the host was so lovely. She had horses and I was into horses, and she was like, do you want to go for a ride? And I was like, oh my God. So we ended up going out horse riding when I was there writing songs, It was it was a beautiful space. And I wrote, I definitely wrote this secret there, and I kind of fell out. That was really cool. And then I did another one where I went down to Fanor in January, which was mad because I was arriving and you couldn't even see the sea. It was so misty, and it was
a bit bleak.
Totally, but that was kind of what I wanted. I lit the stove, I sat in and just sat down, and I definitely I know I finished Between the Pines there, and there was bits that were it's kind of, there's a bit of a mix of songs on that, and I suppose.
And you see, Grainne, as a as an ordinary person, let's use this wild phrase, I can't even imagine what it would be like to book into a place, at a shitty time of the year, with the sole purpose every day of getting up to create something like that. Even the process around it. Did you have a fixed time? I'm going to give this a week or 2 weeks or a month, or were you going to do that until you had 2 or 3 songs, or how did you even manage that in your head?
Oh, I only went away for a couple of days,
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I'd obviously be doing bits and pieces. I know, I think Little Bird was written, in the house I'd been living in at the time. Do you know what I mean? So there was bits of let's say, Between the Pines, I think had been started somewhere else, but I was right, I need to finish some of these songs. So I think the Fanor trip ended up being kind of a lot of finishing and editing, I suppose, really. Do you know what I mean? I feel you can write a song, you could sit down today and write a song, but it needs work. There's a craft to it. You don't just put the word on the page and that's it. Sometimes you do, but a lot of it needs work. And, I mentioned to you just before we press record that last year, so in and around August, I'd been part of this group. I joined a book club to do the artist's way. And it was amazing. It was with a bunch of people in the US, and we had a weekly check-in call and over the process. So there was a girl that was facilitating it, and she had mentioned that she was part of a group where they wrote a song to a prompt every month, and you had to submit the song by the end of the month, and you had to give feedback on everybody's songs, and the song to a deadline, song to a prompt. Yeah, that was kind of the basic premise of it. And I just thought, wow, that's a really good idea. Oh, that was it. There's 12 members. So there's a member for each month of the year, essentially. And then it comes back around. And you can miss 1 month in the year, but if you miss a second, you're out and your place is forfeit and somebody else gets in. So I kind of had been thinking about this, and I had met another songwriter and another thing that I'd gone to, and she was into web developing, and I was like, right, what do you think? Will we do this? So we started building a little website, and we set the group up. So it started last September.
So what's the website? What's the website?
Called songwritercircle.club.
Songwritercircle.club. Yeah. Okay.
And it's behind a login. Do you know what I mean? You have to be a member to have access to any of the stuff, essentially. And so we have 12 members. We started with 10, I think, and we went up and down. There's been many kind of departures and many new arrivals, and there's maybe 4 or 5 of us who have been consistently in the group since we started. It's been really good to start songs, and having a deadline to write to is brilliant, and it might be, the prompts have been really varying. Do you know what I mean? I did the first prompt, and the prompt was trigger alert, spiders, which literally one of the guys in the group is a complete arachnophobic, and I didn't realize. And he was so that but all of the stuff, it's amazing, where you can start with one thing and you kind of have an expectation, maybe even how those things might develop or how people might develop them. And then at the end of the month, you listen to 12 songs and you're like, wow, nobody took it where I thought anybody might take it. So even that, you go well, there's another idea for me, there's loads. We've done stuff to paintings. We've written a song about based on a movie. What else have we done? I'm back around. It's my prompt again this month, and it's a title-based prompt. So it's basically, I've stolen this from another group that I was a member of, but you take an album that you really like, you look at all the titles, and then you rearrange the words or phrases in those titles to create new titles, and then pick one of those titles as your hook title and work a song from that.
So can you let me in on the secret? What was the album?
Well, this secret was that predated all of that, you see, so.
Oh yeah, but what was the album that you chose?
Well, I haven't done it yet. I'm
Okay,
going to do Theo Katzman's Heartbreak Hits.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that. Genius. He did some stuff with Paul Brady actually a couple of years ago. Insane.
Now, did you have a quick look at the titles of the songs before you picked up the album, did you?
Well, I had actually recommended the album to the group as a listening thing kind of a couple of months ago. And then when I looked at it, I was like, actually, this would be a really good one to do. Now, technically, I'm not supposed to be doing the prompt to something. I'm not supposed to be like preempting the prompt myself or whatever. But I think this is okay. I haven't looked at the titles and I haven't looked at rejigging the titles yet. I need to get my tax return out of the way first.
Tax return might make a good song.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure there's something in it.
You were saying to me before we started recording that you kind of liked lockdown to a degree, except the money part.
Yeah, like I had a ball. Like I was saying, I moved into this house like 2.5 years ago, and for the first year that I was here, like I was away all the time. Like Germany, like I tend to do like kind of short little trips to places and do like 4 or 5 gigs and come home, and then I could be off again the next week and the next week or whatever. And I just found that as a space, I didn't use this place at all to create. And I suppose like the record, like I released This Secret in September, October that year. So I was kind of like, I suppose I was playing the songs before and after they come out or whatever, but I was always away. There was always something on. I was always going. So then when lockdown hit and I was forced to be in this space and made to kind of just reconsider like my creative practices and just figuring out, I suppose, getting used to writing and using this place as a creative place. And that's a really good thing. Like, do you know what I mean? And I really wonder when things go back to normal, like how I will manage all that and how I'll maintain it and sustain it and be able to keep doing it, because I do have a lot of time to do the things that I want to do at home. Whereas if I'm going to be on the road, that could change that, you know what I mean? So I kind of ended up, I did the first 6 months, I did the artist way, and I was getting very much into like self-care and being conscious of my morning pages and, all of the things that book brings up, which is like, it's brilliant. I don't know if you've ever looked at it. I'm like a total...
Tell me about it.
So it was written by a woman called Julia Cameron.
Okay.
I believe it was the 80s, maybe it was the 90s, but like she like has a massive artistic background, and it's a 12-step program. It's like 12 chapters, and basically you're supposed to do like a chapter a week. There's activities in each chapter, and it kind of looks into like your creative child and your, just kind of things that may have affected your creativity, like growing up, and it makes you address these things and look at them. Like some of it is hard work, some of it's hard to read, just because there can be quite a lot of God references in it. And if that's like, some people just don't like that. And as a group, we were all like, what is she on about? So it was really nice to do it with people, because we were able to like kind of, we'd sit down every week and go, I loved this chapter. It was so good. I got like so much out of it. Or like, I didn't like this chapter because of X, Y, and Z, but I did like this. And, it was kind of, it's very involved. You have to, it's a commitment. Like you can't just do it kind of part-time. Well, you probably could, but like if you commit to it, it's good. And then after we did that one, we actually did another book by her called Walking in This World, which is essentially like an extension of that 12-week program into another 12-week program, where you also need to go out and walk for 30 minutes a day without distraction. So without your headphones in, not looking at your phone, like literally kind of letting your mind work things out. So you walk things out in your head, so that when you're out and about, you might get struck by some creativity, or you might work out a problem, or you might do that sort of stuff, I found that really even settled me into the house, because I found like that I was buying plants, and, I did some like indoor kind of painting and all that sort of stuff. And I was doing like some other creative stuff that wasn't songwriting. So you're supposed to like take yourself on an artist date every week. And the idea of that is to like kind of fill the well, that you're doing something that's creative, that's not necessarily the craft or the art that you're looking to really focus on, So I was like making cards, and I was doing a bit of painting and embroidery and, all those, like, I'm always knitting anyway, do you know what I mean? So trying to do loads of those kind of things as well to kind of just nurture that part. And then when September hit and I joined that, I started that group and started writing, and I ended up joining Cullum Kearney. Cullum Kearney? Cullum was in Lear. And
okay,
he's also like, he was head of songwriting in BIM, and he was doing like a songwriters powwow So it was like a 6-week thing where you joined up and you ended up like writing with other people, and just everybody was like talking about writing and their experiences and all that sort of stuff. So I ended up doing 2 rounds of that, and then doing some online co-writing, because you're like, well, now we got Zoom and we can't meet in person. So like, how do we do that? And did some of that. And it's just been, I feel like loads of people have probably been really productive and, maybe released music and made money that way. Like, whereas I feel like I've been really productive and I haven't made any money, but I've done loads. Like I said, I've written loads of songs. Oh, actually, during the powwow, I met another guy, another writer from a band called Bluefish Diamond. And he himself and myself were paired together in the week where Cullum asked us to write a song based on Araby by James Joyce. And we just clicked and we wrote a really good song, and we were like really impressed with ourselves. And Jim said afterwards to me, he was like, would you be up for doing a bit more work? Like maybe we do another project or we keep going on it. So we've basically written an album of songs based on Dubliners, it's not recorded yet. That's our next kind of, we're hoping for a bit of funding maybe for that. We'll have to see. But like there's another set of songs, and they were all written online, over Zoom, over WhatsApp, kind of messaging each other. We, let's go away and work on this, and we'll come back to each other in 20 minutes or an hour or whatever. And yeah, we've written loads.
Like the rest of us before March 2020, had you even been on Zoom?
No, God, no. To be fair, I haven't. I know like a lot of people did a lot of Zooming with family and friends and stuff. Like I didn't do that. I'm really using it for music stuff, really.
I think it was good for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
Yeah, the first few weekends, and you were playing bullshit games with friends and stuff. And yeah, personally, I end up finding it quite depressing. We'd like to be with you, and this just doesn't match up. And looking at a bloody computer screen on a Saturday night or a Friday night, even some of the venues that did, like the Gate did some play one night, we got tickets for it. I think all of their funding went into this big play. We used to love going to the Gate. The bloody play was about lockdown and some girl going to see her older father with Deirdre. Like, we had a meal booked, or, we got a lovely takeaway. The way the restaurants were doing the kind of like the takeout, fantastic Italian place in town called Demirco, lovely guy. So we had our stuff, just needed heating, all ready. Oh my God almighty. I think we just had to shut it down after half an hour. This is just like too depressing.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was just horrible. I'm listening to you and this fantastic creative circle, and you're firing that up and everything. But what do you make of the old Grainne? And you see them every day, heading out to their language schools or their creches or their teachers or their PR people, the accountants, the insurance guys. I'm sure where you're in Kildare, you're surrounded by them. And you're making your cup of tea in the morning, you're settling down to do a bit of songwriting. And you see, and for some people maybe in music circles, they just can't even relate to that because they were never that person, but you were.
Yeah, like I suppose over lockdown, I did wonder as well. I was like, God, like, there's been a few times in the last sort of like 10 years, say, where I've been like, okay, should I be considering going back to getting a full-time job? That's not music, like going back to an office job, shall we put it. And, things have happened. Like I said before the call started being recorded, I was kind of at that point back in 2018 where I was like, what am I doing here? My sister had taken me in because I had to move out of my apartment in Dublin. And I was like, God, what am I doing? Am I going to have to go and get a 9-to-5?
And what would your sister say to you, Grainne, at that point? You knock on the door, she knows you're broke, she knows you're following your passion, and it's not paying.
She was amazing. Yeah. She's like herself and Stephen, her husband, there's absolute saints, like, do you know what I mean? And they just took me in, and I lived with them for maybe 9 or 10 months or something like that. They were unbelievable. Yeah, I suppose in a way that family can only be, really. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't or wouldn't nearly expect it of anybody else. Like, and they were brilliant, because I suppose if they hadn't done it, I don't know where or what I would have ended up doing. Of course, like I wouldn't have been homeless. Do you know what I mean? I could have gone home to my mother, or I would have just gotten a job and I would have gotten a...
Yeah, of course. And it's a choice, 100%. And people supported you in that choice to a degree.
Totally.
But, Friday night, Saturday night, you're in the car, you're doing a gig in Collins. you're with great musicians, but there's no money in it. And you're on stage and I'm sorry, I'm even assuming you're on stage. Are you having a good time?
Oh God, yeah. Like, I mean, like there is nothing like it. And this month I have gotten back to doing a few gigs. So it's been very weird to be back in front of an audience. And maybe I should have done what Brendan did and I should have done some more live streaming stuff or whatever, because I suppose while I was being really creative and doing all of these things, I did kind of fall out of playing the songs, you know what I mean? Like, and even when I was going back, so I opened for Luca Bloom at the beginning of the month in the Spirit Store, which was an amazing gig. And then I just did 2 Mary Black supports there in the last week in Navan. And the Luca Bloom gig, I was absolutely shitting myself. Like you realize that, I think you realize a lot, you learn a lot about yourself as you grow older. And one of the things that I've learned in the last sort of 10 years is how nerves manifest themselves in me, and there's the levels, and I will always get a bit nervous before a gig, and it could be just 5 minutes before I go on stage, or it could be 20 minutes before I go on stage. And that would be like a normal gig on, like, when I'm doing all of my touring and constantly on the road. That would be the normal thing. And then when I launched Firing Pin and when I did the Gladys Knight gig, I spent the entire day on the verge of tears. And that was, just hurts, because I just was like absolutely overwhelmed. But as soon as I was just about to walk on stage, I was like, I got this, it's like totally cool, because I'd been gigging and touring and I was playing and I was fine. But the Luca Bloom gig, it went to the next level, and next level is like literally rattling. My hands would not do what I wanted them to do. I could not play specific songs because I knew that I didn't have the control of my fingers. They were not going to do what I wanted them to do.
Was that just from being out of the circuit, out of the rhythm for so long, or was it playing with him, or what was it?
I think it was a combination of like having not stood in front of a room of real life people in a really long time. I think I worked it out. It was like something like 380 days. Does that couldn't be right. 480 days. I wrote it down somewhere. I can't remember now. But anyway, that, and I suppose having not played the songs really a lot, like as I said to someone recently, like most of the time when I play my guitar sitting here, I'm sitting here doing it. I'll sit in this chair. It's got the right little leg height for my legs and it's like really comfortable, and I'll sit here and I'll play. But when I'm on stage, I stand, and okay, I practiced a bit before the gig and I was obviously standing, but that alone is such a massive change in just what you do, and having to speak to people, into the microphone. I think I realized that over lockdown, like with Zoom and stuff, when you do end up in the scenarios with, like, let's say, introduce yourself or whatever, the anxiety kicks in and I just go, hi, I'm Grainne, I'm a singer-songwriter and I live in Kilcock and I blah, 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 blah. And I go on this kind of like, fast paced, sound like I'm really like happy breezy, but actually it's not ease. It's actually anxiety that's making me talk so fast. And and I'm having a laugh and it's great crack and la 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 la, but it's not comfort, And I used to hate speaking into the microphone, like when I started off gigging, because I just don't want everything to be amplified, Like I'll sing anything, but like ask me to speak and I didn't like it. And it took a long time to get used to that and be comfortable with that. So to then like not have done that for such a long time and then have to do that again.
Mark was a good teacher, wasn't he, to be behind Mark at those gigs?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot, like standing on that stage, because nobody was looking at me. I could stand there and look around the room, watch what was going on, see everybody. Whereas when you're singing, you have to be more like present in what you're doing. So you don't have the ability to like observe what's going on in the room. And I think those stages gave me a lot of stage confidence, I suppose, for want of a better word. So that when it did come to me doing it on my own and being stood there for my whole set, I didn't mind standing in front of a microphone and singing for an hour and a half, because I did it. I was like used to looking out into the crowd, and that I was comfortable with that. You know what I mean? So you pick up things along the way,
It's funny the way an artist wins a crowd over just by having the little chat and telling the few stories, and if the stories connect at all. I was at a David Gray gig, and it was in the Opera House in Cork, and there was a girl playing before, and for the life of me now, I can't. I wrote a blog about it, but anyway, I can't think of her name right now. But she told a lovely story about, was it her granddad or an uncle who was passing away, and she got the opportunity of gigging with David Gray in the States, and she went off and he gave her a few bob so she could always have money for a drink. And when they were touring at night or traveling from one gig to the other, she was talking about the Fireflies. You probably know the artist I'm talking about. So she wrote a song about Fireflies. But I remember, like, at that moment in time, from being, you know, it's like watching the support gig. No one is there for the support act. They're busy going in and out, getting pints or whatever. But her gig, you know, however many songs she played, maybe 8 songs or whatever, the 3 or 4 before she told that story were, yeah, no one was paying attention. But she caught people with the story. Yeah. And from then on in, she had everyone. Like, it was just so simple. And what I remember most about that gig was that story and how it changed the feeling. So being able to tell those stories is so important.
Yeah. It's amazing as well, though, like what will win a crowd. Do you know what I mean? The first Gladys Knight gig that I did, you know, that was my first time on the Olympia stage, which is probably why I was so nervous as well.
Probably.
But it was like, you know, like Gladys Knight, my God, like, do you know what I mean? So like I had my set out or whatever, but I'd also decided that day that I was going to do my Joni Mitchell cover. And I thought, you know, from an age profile, you know, she'd be the same age as Gladys. And I thought like the audience would appreciate it. And when I started singing, they started clapping after every couple of lines. They were just like, do you know what I mean? And it was just one of those things where it was like, they were so in the moment with me. It was so great. And it was so nice to like, but it's amazing, like the things you have to think about these things. Do you know what I mean? Trying to figure out like what will, especially when they're not your audience, you know, you don't know. Like I did a Bay City Rollers gig in the Olympics.
I saw that in the notes. I was like, holy shit. And Eagle-Eyed Cherry, how cool is
that? Amazing. His band were amazing. They were all so cool. They were so lovely. But like that was it was a suitable gig. It worked, you know. But like the Bay City Rollers was such an odd matching, and the audience again, like, you know, it's that thing where like, look, they're not my audience. Like I knew that they were never going to be my audience, that gig, like, you know. And there was a lot of booze and a lot of crack, and some guy messaged me like the next day on Facebook to tell me that like that I was great, and it was a pity more people weren't listening, sort of thing. But look, silence is never loud enough when you've got a loud room. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He said that the Bay City Rollers, he didn't enjoy their gig at all. He would have preferred to listen to me. You know, so you just like, you have to take the kind of rough with the smooth, but those stages are just so lovely. Like, I mean, it's so nice to be able to walk out onto the Olympia stage. You know what I mean? Or what's it called now?
Did Gladys interact with you?
I met her at the end after the second night. I was really nervous to meet her. She had such a big crew with her. I mean, her band was massive, and she had like massive, big, burly, like security guards with her. And, you know, it was Miss Knight, Miss Knight, we'll see you now. You know what I mean? And I'd approached like one of the team, and I was like, you know, I'd really like to say just hello and thank you or whatever before she left. So after the second gig, I was like literally like sitting at the edge of the stairs backstage waiting for her to kind of just like stop on her way past to say hello. Like, she was amazing. Like, she was unbelievable. Vocally at 75, if I could do a fraction of what she can do, I'd be happy. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
So is it possible, Grainne, that at 75 you'll be doing a gig and there'll be some young, enthusiastic singer, you know, working the kind of hard yards, mesmerized, nervous about meeting you, and sitting at the bottom of the stairs? What do you think?
Oh God, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. I spoke to a friend of mine last week, somebody else that I was in university with, and Catherine was a mature student when we were there, and, you know, was so focused on all she was doing, and was very much aware of like the education she was getting, and came out with the first but she was also so talented, you know. But she's got a music school now, and she's got multiple orchestras, and we were talking about, you know, over COVID about like, you know, maybe making the decision to choose something else, and would she, and she was saying that, you know, like she has thought many times about going and getting another job and doing something else. She's like, but she knew that she would always find a student who needed to be taught, and she'd always end up back opening a music school. So she knows better than to walk away from it, because she just ended up coming back to it anyway. And I feel like that's the thing with music. Like I don't know how I'd do anything else.
You're stuck with it.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, I don't know if stuck with it is the way to go. Well, like, I'd prefer to be stuck with it than stuck with anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Comes down to, like, I suppose, financial stability and making a bit more money. I'll just have to do the lotto a little bit more often and, sell some more CDs or something.
Well, there's a good friend of ours, Pat Dolan. He's a soccer manager. He's a soccer agent now. He used to be the manager of Cork City here, and he'd talk about obviously trying to win matches. And he managed a lot of really good League of Ireland teams, and you can't guarantee winning. But the one thing he used to always say, you just need to prepare to win, and that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
The rest of it is kind of in the lap of the gods in a way, but you just have to prepare to win, and I think we all need to do that. So, on the subject of winning and on the subject of happiness. So my first question for you, I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
What's Grainne Hunt's version of happiness?
I suppose there's loads of different parts of my life that bring me happiness. Do you know what I mean? Obviously being on stage is a huge one, but also being at home on my own is another one. Like sitting down the couch doing a bit of knitting, it's firelit, cup of tea and chocolate biscuit.
You're made.
I have like 2 little nephews who are just the greatest little people in the world. Family, friends, there's all of that, I think I'm a happy person. I like to think I'm a happy person. I suppose just trying to balance all of those things and getting them all to be part of life as you go along to keep it all going. I mean, the title track from This Secret, I wrote about, it's essentially like a love song to the west of Ireland, because I realised in my 30s that I love to be by the sea, and that is a happy place for me, collecting stones and shells on a beach and putting them in a pocket and finding them 2 weeks later or 2 months later and taking it out. Like I have coats that I have stones in them from beaches in Newcastle in a secondhand coat that I bought in the shop with my friend on that day before I picked up the stone and put it in the pocket. And every time I put the coat on, I take that stone out of the pocket and it's still there. Do you know what I mean? Those little things, like little kind of trigger reminders of awesome places and awesome people and awesome times,
I love what you're saying about figuring things out. What you're saying, you figured out that you like being near the sea. And in a funny way, I think life is about figuring things out. And I always love that idea that all we're doing is kind of chiseling our lives, and you keep on tweaking it and you discover something new. I'm going to do more of that and less of something else or whatever. So I also have the idea of winning happy. And the thing I always kind of say to people, that analogy or whatever, you might love playing soccer, but it'd be kind of pointless if there weren't goalposts. And every now and then you need to stick the ball in the back of the net and get that huge feeling when you do that. Those kind of winning moments. So for you, what does winning look like?
I suppose on a small scale, after a gig that's not mine. So like, say the Mary Black gigs or the Luca Bloom gigs, and people come up to you and tell you that you're great, or that you touched them, or that you made them cry. Like, if I can make someone cry, then I've done it.
Yay.
And that sounds weird, but like, I do manage to do that at times, but people can be so kind, and just, if you can touch somebody enough at a gig that they want to come up and tell you how awesome you are afterwards, like, I think that is amazing. Like, do you know what I mean? If I could do that, it seems a bit mad. Like, I'm just doing what I love. And if I just do it, like, and you like it, like, that's fucking winning for me. Sorry for my bad language.
No. Bad language is good. But, bad language is good language.
I mean, obviously, if I were to set like bigger goals that I haven't achieved yet, and that, like, those kind of winning goals, like, I love to play with like the likes of Brandy Carlisle, or head over and be able to do a tour in the US, like have a bit of a visa so that you could go over there and spend some time there and not worry about, immigration and all that sort of stuff, be able to play less shows, but bigger shows, but still maintain the connection. Because I don't want to get to the point where, well, I don't know, like I like meeting the people, and it's so nice to be able to speak to people. And a guy walked up to me at the weekend and went, "I have that CD," and I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I think I bought it off you in the Olympia." And I was like, "No way!" And he was at the Gladys Knight gig. So he bought like the Firing Pin CD. So then he bought The Secret because he didn't have that one, But it was like that connection was so random because like he wasn't coming to see me. He was going to see Mary Black, but he got to see me again. In that kind of way. And
Gladys won't have that.
No, because you don't have the one-on-one. Do you know what I mean? And I think when you are a smaller artist, like that is so lovely. Like there's nothing like talking to people after a gig and having that crack and openness. And I can't even tell you the story about the woman that I met at the gig the previous night.
Go on.
No, I actually couldn't. I couldn't say it.
No.
To be fair to her, but the pair of us started crying, standing at the merch desk together. Do you know what I mean? And it's just those moments of like real connection with people. And it's so lovely. I'm complete strangers, And
of course, when you're at the gig, you think, I think Grainne was fantastic tonight, but I don't want to be disturbing or I shouldn't say anything. And of course, I'd say anything to anyone. And I always think, if there's been a great gig, you should go up to the artist and say, "Thank you, I thought you were fantastic."
Yeah.
And why would you not do that? And I think a lot of the time when people are ambling out the door, they just feel they don't have permission to do that, or they think it's not appropriate to do that. Yeah, and I know you do appreciate that when that's the case.
Yeah.
So another big question for you. What was your best day?
Ooh.
I'll leave you with that one now. I'll go down and put on the kettle, and I'll come back. You might have it figured out.
Are you serious? You give me?
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm serious about the question. I won't disappear.
Oh, right, okay. God, like, what was my best day? Like, Gladys was a pretty amazing day. Nashville, recording the album, probably listening to the masters in the car. He had sent them to me and he was like, "Don't be too fussy about them. Like, don't be like, oh, I think my vocal." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I'm not going to be that person," because I really feel like that record was a snapshot of a time, like I don't necessarily consider myself to be like a Nashville sounding artist or a country sounding artist.
No, I wouldn't say that, definitely. Yeah.
The record certainly is, but like that's because that's where I was and that's what I did. And the experience was absolutely amazing. The lads in the studio were incredible. It was ridiculous. Like we recorded that record in 2.5 days, recorded and mixed it in 2.5 days. You know what I mean?
But that's what they do, don't they?
It is. It totally is, and it's such a vibe. I would say walking out of the job, when I went just kind of before, so 2017 when I left, that was pretty big. It was a pretty good day. Like I pretty much didn't know what I was going to do in my life, but I was like, that's a good day. I don't know. Like there's there's been some lovely stage moments with Glenn Hansard. There's been some really nice things there. I don't know.
You have loads of them. That's pretty good.
You should have sent me that question last week. Because I'm sure in a week's time could be like, "Oh my God, I totally should have said that."
We can do an extra part. Yeah, an add-on.
Send you a voice note next week, Leo.
Yeah, that's okay. So I want to finish the podcast with a song of yours.
Okay.
And you choose it and tell me why.
I would say, why don't we go with, I'm like, while I've talked about the Nashville record, I'm trying to think like maybe we should just play Lilacs because that was the start of it all.
Okay. Tell me about the song.
So that's the one where myself and James, I had written all of the music, the melody and the chords and all the guitar part. And I was like, right, here you go. So, yeah.
Where did you write it?
Oh, God. I was living in Stony Batter at the time. I lived in this like a house share for 4 years or something. I definitely know that's where it was written because that's where I met James. That's where James came over to write. And I feel like it grew out of, like musically, it grew out of learning to play Blackbird and those kind of positions up the neck of the guitar, and kind of a rearranging of those chords into like my song. And then I was in Italy for a festival called Caltern Pop. It's connected to Haldern Pop, which is a German festival. So it's like the sister festival. And before the festival, they put this beautiful choir called Cantus Domus put out a call for artists to submit a song for them to consider doing a choral arrangement with the artist for like the last day, the gigs or whatever, in this ridiculously beautiful wood-lined panelled hall at the top of a mountain, like that you had to take like one of those mad kind of car things up a hill to get to. And they wanted to do Lilacs. So that was amazing. That made me cry also. And they just did such an amazing job. And it was only when the choral director he gave me the sheet music. I actually should have taken it because I didn't, but I'd written a time signature change into the song, which is not something that I would have, if somebody had asked me, I would have been like, oh, I don't know. But like, I hadn't realized that I'd done that. And it seems like I did it in one of the songs that are on This Secret. And it seems I've done it a couple of times now in different things. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that totally reminds me, because I actually did something with them last year. I did an advent calendar of song last December. That's why my year was insane. Because I decided to do a Christmas song every day in December, be it either solo or with other people. And I released like a snippet or a song a day on Instagram for the entire month. And they did the Wexford Carol, but they did it as Gaeilge. So we did a Carol Loch Orman with a German choir singing the most beautiful like harmony parts to it. And it was all recorded remotely, like they all did it in their bedrooms or whatever. And then I recorded my piece here, and then they mixed it and they put it out as part of their Advent. They did like, what's the 4 Sundays of Advent?
Oh God, and you're asking me?
They did. It's called Klanglichte, I think in German.
Yeah.
They put it out on one of the Sundays. They were doing 4 songs, and I was one of them. But it was amazing. Crazy, stupid idea. I will never do it again. But I have another project that I'm doing that's probably equally stupid. But
go for it.
Oh no, I haven't announced it yet, so I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. We can
worked on it before I could actually put it out there.
About creativity, this is one I came up with, and it was actually to do with the guys down the White Horse. Have you played the White Horse?
I was down a couple of times. I opened for Paul Tiernan there. I can't remember when, but it was definitely, I suppose it's at least 4 years ago now anyway. But it's such a lovely room. And I'd met guys from the guitar club as well before. Yeah. They're brilliant, like Jesus.
Well, Joe Carey, who owns the venue, you know, he's obviously steeped in his music, and Joe Philpott and that whole circle. And every now and then there's a new collaboration. And I was watching them one night, and there was a particular collaboration with Joe Philpott's wife, and there's a piano player, and the guy, the classical piano player he's on West Cork. An incredible guy. I think he's in his 70s.
Well, but there was a thing about him recently, wasn't there? Because yeah, I saw it on the press, because it was something about him losing the house or losing the piano, and the community all came back together to. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
fantastic guy. Yeah. I think he's one of the only people in the world that can play some classical piece, and he'd had a stroke, but he managed to get it back after. I don't know, but they did a bunch of old Irish songs with him on the piano. It was gorgeous. I think they were calling it Emerald Ivory or something like that. But it was really beautiful. But they're forever doing their collaboration. And I was saying to Joe, I said, it takes 2 people to create something. Someone to say, how about? Mm-hmm. And someone else to say, why not?
Yeah.
And the minute you have those 2 things, you're rocking. There's new projects, there's new ideas, there's new everything. Yeah, so it sounds to me like you're doing a lot of that at the moment.
I get these harebrained ideas, and the Advent calendar thing had come to me the year before, but it came to me too late to put it together, you know. And then I had this other idea, and again, like it came to me at a good time, but like just try, like, because you're waiting for other people, and you are a bit dependent when you're collaborating, and this is a very collaborative project, and you're just dependent on other people being available and scheduling it in. And because it's not like financially something that people are getting paid for, it's a passion project. And if you want in, and that's great. But then that kind of leads to people being a bit more kind of lax with times and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like deadlines aren't deadlines when maybe there's not necessarily anything serious involved. It is for a bit of crack, you know. But it's nice to be able to reach out to people and kind of have people do cool things with you. You know what I mean? It's fun.
Well, Grainne Hunt, I'm glad you walked out of that job. Yeah, I think that was a good idea.
You're probably not the only person who's glad I walked out of that job.
And without a shadow of a doubt, I think you are absolutely having a ball and loving what you were doing. So well done.
Thanks very much. I am, to be fair. Just got to keep it up now.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I got lost near the middle way. Compassion has just one rule. The single thing is to remain. Respect and love and pain is change. Don't you trim me bare. If you stop me bloom. Thought I left it clear. If you spread me thin or leave me still, I'll pass in time. You can be sure, like those lilacs in June. Are you always free to attain? Emptiness has just one rule: to leave your mind and to sometimes leave you cold standing for all that's gone. Don't you trim me bare. If you stop me blue. Thought I left it clear. If you spread me thin or leave me still, I'll pass in time. You can be sure, like those lilacs in June.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.